Most people know the name Nikola Tesla. They know the lightning, the towers, the brilliance that redefined modern life. But there's a part of Tesla no textbook dares to mention. Not the scientist, not the inventor, but the seeker, the man who once claimed to glimpse into something not of this world. At Color of Life, we tell stories like these, where science brushes against the soul, and reason stands face to face with the unknown. Stories not just meant to inform, but to awaken, because sometimes, it's in the quietest moments that the loudest truths reveal themselves. This is not a tale about fame or failure. This is about the night Nikola Tesla claimed to meet the devil. But not the devil as you imagine. Not fire, not horns, just a presence made of light, of silence, of unbearable knowing, a secret he whispered only once. To a dying friend, to Mark Twain, and now, to you. Let us begin. Part 1. The Labyrinth of a Restless Mind. By 1907, Tesla's world had grown quiet, not with peace, but with absence. Gone were the reporters who once crowded outside his lab. Gone were the patrons who toasted his genius with cigars and champagne. Now, only debt collectors knocked at his door. The Wardenclyffe Tower, his dream of free energy for the world, stood unfinished, its iron bones rusting in the cold Atlantic wind. But Tesla kept going, not because of hope, but because something inside him wouldn't stop moving. A storm of thought, a current that refused to be shut off. He slept 2 hours, sometimes none, food barely touched, conversation avoided. His mind had become its own universe, spiraling with symbols, ideas, and visions too vast for speech. He didn't just tinker with machines. He entered them. He became the field, the pulse, the arc. He claimed he could run experiments entirely in his imagination, and often, they worked better than in reality. But that winter was different. One night, beneath flickering gaslight and the faint smell of ozone, Tesla did something he had done countless times before. He connected his body directly to the machine. Not in a show of bravado, but in pursuit of something beyond the veil. He let 150.000 volts dance through his skull. And in that moment, that impossible moment, he didn't feel pain. He felt release. His breathing slowed. His thoughts flattened into stillness. It was as if the lab, the world, his body, all dissolved. And then, it arrived. Not with sound, not with light, but with awareness. Something had found him in the silence. And it was watching. Part 2. The light that wasn't light. Tesla would later call it an invasion of presence. Not a hallucination, not a vision, but a visitor, not from space, but from state. A state of being so foreign, it could only be described in metaphors that collapse as soon as they're spoken. It shimmered, not with brightness, but with intention. It cast no shadow. It had no center. And yet, it made the air around Tesla feel aware. He didn't move, didn't blink. He knew instinctively. Any reaction from him would be meaningless. Because this was not a presence that noticed him. This was a presence that knew him. Every layer of his mind, from childhood memory to unspoken ambition, felt exposed. It wasn't intrusive. It was surgical. There was no judgment, no warmth, no cruelty, only contact. And that contact wasn't made with words or gestures. It was made through understanding. Sudden, overwhelming, clear. In an instant, Tesla felt his mind reshaping. Thoughts that once took hours now completed themselves before they began. Patterns formed, truths aligned. It was as though this presence had opened a back door in his consciousness and walked through unannounced. And in that altered silence, Tesla knew this was the devil, but not the devil of childhood stories. No pitchfork, no roar, no drama, just a being, not designed to terrify, but to reveal. The light did not threaten. It did not invade. It simply stood there, untouched by time, unmoved by reaction. Its only purpose, to make Tesla see, not what the world was, but what it always had been, and perhaps, what it could become. Part 3. A meeting of minds. There was no sound, no light show, no thunder from the heavens. Just an overwhelming clarity. Tesla's consciousness, once crowded with equations, theories, and ceaseless thinking, now opened like a sky after storm. And into that vastness, the light poured its knowing. He saw himself not as Nikola Tesla, the man, but as a phenomenon, like lightning itself. His mind, a conduit. His life, a fulcrum on which the future could tilt. Visions flooded him, a planet humming with wireless energy, clean and endless. Children studying by light harvested from the atmosphere. Hospitals powered by fields that healed cells. Not just treated symptoms, but the scene shifted. That same energy turned weapon. That same frequency now used to erase, to blind, to silence. He saw cities fall in seconds. Civilizations turned to dust, not by malice, but by misuse. It wasn't evil that destroyed the world in these visions. It was potential, unguarded. He understood, with terrifying precision, that intelligence alone was never enough. That even brilliance, unchecked by conscience, becomes destruction in elegant disguise. And the being before him, the devil, or whatever it truly was, never flinched. It didn't guide him, didn't tempt him, didn't instruct him. It simply made him see. Held up the cosmic mirror and stepped back. Because that was the test. Not to be pushed, but to be offered a choice. The most dangerous gift of all. Freedom. To choose creation, or devastation, and then to live, or die, with the consequences. Part 4. The fall back to Earth. And then, like a thread cut mid-weave, it was over. The connection snapped. Tesla's body crumpled. He hit the ground hard. His limbs jerking violently, not from fear, but from overload. It was as if his nervous system had been struck by something far more volatile than voltage, truth. When he opened his eyes, the lab was still there. The coils, the notes, the tools, but everything looked wrong. Too sharp, too bright, like waking from a dream only to find the world had lost some vital texture. Sounds felt crude, objects looked heavy, and time moved like thick syrup. But the real noise wasn't around him. It was within. Tesla couldn't forget what he saw, because forgetting would have been mercy. And what he had been given wasn't mercy. It was revelation. He didn't speak of it. Not in lectures, not in interviews, but something in him had changed. He could no longer lie to himself. Science was not clean. It was not innocent. It was a loaded weapon. And every new idea pulled the trigger on something, sometimes light, sometimes shadow. He saw clearly now. Discovery without responsibility is desecration. And the so-called devil? Not a punisher, not a seducer, just the quiet accountant of consequence. He doesn't arrive with threats. He arrives with receipts. And Tesla, trembling on the floor, staring at the ceiling above him, realized the bill had come due. Not for his sins, but for his sight. Because once you see, you don't get to unsee. You only get to choose what to do with what you know. Part 5. The long echo of a secret. He never wrote it down. Never diagrammed it. Never turned it into theory. It wasn't meant for labs. It wasn't meant for the world. It was meant for one moment. One soul who could receive it without breaking it. That soul was Twain. By then, the great writer had lost much, his wife, his faith, and his certainty. He had grown sharp, bitter at times. But that night, as Tesla whispered the unthinkable, Twain listened not with skepticism, but with surrender. He didn't laugh, didn't interrupt. He just absorbed, as if he, too, had always suspected that light and darkness weren't opposites, but mirrors. Later, on his deathbed, Twain passed the story to his daughter. Not as fact, not as confession, but as inheritance. And with that, the tale dissolved into memory. But Tesla changed. Those who knew him, or thought they did, noticed a quiet rupture in the man they once called a genius. He no longer tried to prove anything. No longer sought recognition. Something had settled behind his eyes. A kind of sacred fatigue. He still worked, still invented, but not to impress, not even to solve. Now, it was different. Now, he chased something invisible. Not the god of cathedrals. Not the devil of dogma. But the thin thread of truth that ran between them, elusive, wordless, and real. In the years that followed, Tesla became a man half in this world, and half in another. And maybe that was his final invention. A bridge between the seen and the unseen. Built not with wires, but with wonder. Part 6. The Architect of Consequences. After that night, invention lost its innocence. Tesla no longer saw wires and magnets as neutral tools. He saw them as choices, each carrying weight far beyond intention. A spark wasn't just a spark. It was the seed of a future. One that could nurture or consume. He began hiding things, not because they failed, but because they worked too well. Rumors swirled that he abandoned prototypes that could have revolutionized warfare. Others whispered of notebooks burned in silence. Not to protect his legacy, but to protect us. Tesla had glimpsed something most minds never touch. That the line between genius and catastrophe is often drawn after the fact. And once you've seen how easy it is to cross, you build differently. He began to ask questions most inventors avoid. Who would use this? And why? Not can it be done? But should it? He came to believe that science is not the opposite of faith, but the testing of it. That every creation is a form of prayer, or a form of warning. And each machine is a mirror, reflecting the soul of its maker. He stopped seeing himself as a pioneer, and started seeing himself as a gatekeeper. Not of technology, but of consequence. Because he now understood what few ever do. That power, once given, cannot be recalled. And ideas, once released, cannot be unthought. In that awareness, Tesla transformed. No longer a man reaching for the stars, but a man guarding the door between light and fire. Part 7. The Final Gift. Years passed, but that night never left him. Tesla never again chased the limelight. He no longer needed applause or applause makers. Because once you've touched the infinite, the noise of the world becomes small, like echoes in an empty hall. In private, he wrote, "I have realized that God exists, but not a God shaped by dogma or doctrine. Not a throne, not a beard, just presence, quiet, constant, watching." He began to see his ideas not as his own, but as transmissions, frequencies tuned into, not created. He wasn't the origin, he was the antenna. And perhaps that night, that strange communion with light, was never meant to scare him. It was meant to prepare him, to show him that brilliance is not enough, that the mind is not the final frontier. It is the threshold. And the devil? Perhaps just a final checkpoint. Not a villain, but a filter, separating those who want power from those who understand it. Near the end of his life, Tesla tried to find a church, not to confess, but to give thanks. Yet every street turned to stone beneath his feet, as if New York itself was telling him, the divine isn't a destination. It's already within you. When he finally stood at the doors of St. Nicholas, something inside him broke open. Not in grief, not in triumph, in surrender. He had looked into eternity, but never stopped being human. And perhaps that's the final gift. Not the inventions, not the theories, but the reminder that no matter how far we reach, we still must choose how we carry the light. Tesla did, and now, so must we. Conclusion. Light beyond light. We expect evil to be grotesque, loud, obvious, monstrous. But what if true danger wears no mask? What if it arrives as a question, not a threat? Tesla's devil didn't shout. It didn't burn. It simply offered knowledge, without instruction. Like a mirror with no frame. And that's what makes it so human. Because the hardest decisions aren't forced upon us, they're revealed to us. And then left in our hands. Maybe that's the sacred design. A universe where even the most brilliant mind must choose not just what to build, but why. Here on Color of Life, we believe wisdom is not a destination. It's a direction. And stories like Tesla's help us remember. Light alone isn't what saves us. It's how we carry it. So if you've heard something in this story that stayed with you, don't let it fade. Reflect on it. Share it. And if you're ready to explore more of life's hidden corridors, you know where to find us. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and above all, stay human.